There are a few people that have appeared to be as consistently driven as you either. You talked about getting on the Maiden tour, the Almighty, and then that great quote, every night when we got on stage, we tried to outdo them. We were so arrogant. But Steve Harris comes across to you and says, listen, it's nice to have a band that comes on and pushes us every night. And you then joined the football team, the infamous Iron Maiden FC.
Yeah, I was very lucky. I never thought that he said, you play football? I said, well, badly. He said, well, we've got a place in the team. Come and be a part of the team, play the next game. And I did, and it was so much fun. And to play football and be a part of it. And still, that's my favourite tour that I've ever done, is supporting Iron Maiden and being part of the Maiden football team. And occasionally I'd travel with Steve as well, because we had to get to a match for the next day or something. It was just a great time. And if there was I remember the one time we'd beaten somebody, a team of radio presenters or something, and he'd go, oh, you do the speech, Blaze. And I mean, it was just great fun. Really great fun.
So Bruce leaves, and you think, right, okay, I'm over this. And you actually asked for an audition.
Yeah.
You're like, look, why not? Why shouldn't I ever go? Give me an audition.
Well, they knew me anyway, and they got my albums and everything. And it was just the same as everybody else. The advantage I had was they knew me a bit, and they already had my album. So when I asked for an audition, I just had that little advantage over everybody else, but there was still everybody else was auditioning, and there were some great singers in there. So that was the advantage I had, really. And when they said, okay, yeah, you can come for an audition, then you had to learn 10 songs, which were always in the set at that time. And when I went for that audition, I thought, you know what? However unlikely it is, for an hour, I'm going to be the singer of Iron Maiden. That's it. And I just thought, I can't learn anymore.
Did you think you were going to get the gig?
No way. No, I didn't think that at all. I just thought, I'm going to forget everything now and just enjoy singing with Iron Maiden for this hour, these songs, most of which I knew very well from being a fan. It's a different level to when you've got to try and learn the lyrics and everything. But I did my best with that, and I enjoyed it the best I could, and that was it. So something must have worked. But I think one of the things, which I don't think I've mentioned before in any interviews, is that the way it was laid out in, just a not a very big room, but their own very small rehearsal room. You don't need a big space to rehearse in. The monitors and the microphone were set up just a little bit away from the band, so you were looking at everybody. And when I went in, I didn't really think about this. I said, well, can I stand here? Which was right next to Nico. And so I was in the band. So everybody was around me, and I would look like we did it at the Wolfsbane rehearsals instead of looking at the band. So I changed that, and they kind of looked at me a bit funny and goes, okay. And I turned the monitor around so that it was facing, and I was actually there listening to that monitor while I was looking at the band. And I knew all the drum fills, of course, by heart. So I knew what was coming. It was just great. And to hear in the room Dave Murray playing some of those solos and riffs, was like, oh yeah, this is fantastic. It was
anybody still got a recording of those?
I don't think they did record that audition. I don't think it was recorded. Well, if they did record it, it was a secret recording.
Hey, now, come on, Christmas Eve, 1994. What were you doing on that day, that moment when the call came through?
Well, I lived with my girlfriend at the time, and we were, pretty much broke. We were hoping that maybe that I'd get a chance, and we were thinking, oh, well, will we hear or not, and everything. And that was it. It was just sitting at home, and then the call came. You've got it. And it was First, it
Did
was a
you
bit.
keep it together, by the way?
Well, at first it was a big relief, like, oh, I've got a future in music. And then it was, wow, this is like the biggest thing. I really hadn't prepared myself to actually get it. I hadn't thought what that would be like. So that was mad. I bought myself a crate of Guinness and an answer phone were the first things that I got. And I remember my girlfriend at the time saying, "Oh, spending a lot of money." You know, when we bought, because we bought an answer phone, because you had to have one. That was part of the thing. Get yourself, you've got it now. Get yourself an answer phone. Very important that you don't miss any messages, because it was just on the edge of mobile phones coming in when that happened. So yeah, it was a crazy, crazy time.
Did you do anything completely outrageous apart from the crate of Guinness and the answer machine?
No,
Did you wander by the showrooms of the
no,
Range Rovers and Porsches
no.
and have a look?
No, what happened was that my girlfriend at the time, her uncle was selling his Jag, and it was 10 years old. And we joked in Wolfsbane, we'd looked in Auto Trader, and you could get a Jag for £1,000 or £900 because they're so expensive to run. But I thought, you know what, that's actually achievable. An idiot like me could probably scrape together 900 quid if you were desperate, and you could actually own a Jag. A fool like me, I thought, how cool would that be? You'd be driving you couldn't drive it far because I only did about 12 miles to the gallon. But I thought, you know what? And then at a meeting much later on, I had a Reliant Robin, which I'm not ashamed of at all. I'm a biker, you know. I passed my bike test. I got a motorcycle and a Reliant Robin, neither of which was suitable to travel the 100 odd miles to Harlow and back for rehearsals every week. So I said, "Oh, would it be possible to get some money for a car?" And they said, yeah. So they gave me a little advance towards a car, and I bought my girlfriend's uncle's old Jag, 10 years old, Series 6 Jag. And it was just, it was fantastic. But people thought I bought a new Jag, because they didn't know what a new Jag looked like compared to the old Series 6. And it was, well, bloody hell, I was joined Iron Maiden, he's bought a new Jag. No, they cost £40,000. I had about £3,000 to spend on a car, and I spent it on a second-hand car.
So you've had plenty of attention with Wolfsbane in the States and the albums you produced with us. This though was on another level. I mean, the press and the media were ravenous for information about who was taking over from Bruce. So were you schooled a bit? Did they manage you in terms of getting you in front of the media, or were you just sort of left to go and talk to them and do whatever?
It's just the same game. You know, I often use that sports analogy that if you're playing football, soccer, then you can play in the Sunday league and get together with your mates on a Sunday and play that game. It's the same rules, it's the same offside, it's the same penalties, it's the same goal scoring. But when you go up and up, it was really like playing the Premiership, and then it was like playing for England. So the level of attention, it's exactly the same game that you're playing with the same rules. It's just so intense, and the expectation is so much higher. You are playing for England, and you are expected to win every game that you play. You've got to score every night. And that was it, really. Who have they brought in at this level? So everybody wanted to talk to me, and that was okay. And people love stories, don't they, about the underdog and people getting their dreams and everything.
Yeah.
So it was incredible, the amount of press. And what I didn't enjoy was you'd have a press day and they would schedule it, and it could be 20 different interviews. But unlike you and I doing this interview, where it's pretty much we're open ended, we've set aside this time. There you go. Okay, this publication, they get 30 minutes. Then this fanzine, they get 10 minutes. and there's no break in between. So you could be doing 15 or 20. You can't even have a pee or anything. It's unreal. You'd be lucky if you get time to take a drink or any. Absolutely. And you know what? When I became independent, I'm a small independent artist now. I said to my manager, you know what we're going to do? Everybody gets the same amount of time. That's it. It's like you have your 30, 40 minutes, or in exceptions where it's more open-ended, you have an hour. And that's it. Everybody gets the same. And also you get half an hour break in between if you need it or not. So we do less interviews on a day, but they're much more quality. And you never know. I would always feel sorry for these fanzines because they didn't ask any obvious questions. They already knew the answer because they knew everything about the band.
Yeah, yes, good point.
They'd ask interesting questions that would make you think, oh, yeah, what was my mum's favourite record and stuff, and stuff like that. And can I name 5 songs with shoes in? And stuff like this, incredible things, and all the big magazines had cynical journalists who talked to everybody. We're like, okay, what's the new album called? What's this? And that's it. And they were tedious. So that was a part of it. And you'd start getting into a conversation. Okay, that's your 10 minutes. Yeah, well, that was the interesting one. And then you've got to sit with somebody for 30 minutes or 40 minutes because they've got 1 million selling circulation. And man, they don't know nothing about you and they don't care. They've just been sent to do a job. So that was one of the awkward sides of doing all that promo. But then that's over and you're on to the tour. And that's a different thing again. So really it was the same game as we played in Wolfsbane, everything we did then, but it was just so much more intense.
Do you remember the opening day? I mean, I was looking back to try and find the dates of the tour. From March 10th, 1995. Was that the first date? Was in Tucson, the convention center?
No, that's wrong.
What was the first?
It was in Israel. We started off in Israel.
Really?
Yeah, we started
because they put the Israel date on after March 10th.
No, we never went.
Right.
Never went to America or anything. That's your internet lies. That is. So
that's interesting. So that was an interesting venue to begin.
We started in Israel, and one of the things is, and Paul Elliott, I think he was working for Kerrang magazine at the time, used to be at Sounds. He'd come out, and the journalist. But one of the crazy things about that tour, Man on the Edge had got into the top 10. We were on Top of the Pops. I'd been on Top of the Pops, and there we performed. I sang live on Top of the Pops and did make a terrible hash of it. It went really well.
This is a big thing, by the way, isn't it? You singing live.
For us back then, yeah, singing live, because they'd changed Top of the Pops because people had got fed up with miming. And also bad miming was going on. And artists who resented miming were kind of wiggling the mic around and everything and making a bit of a mockery of it. So they forced everybody to sing live. But fine for me, I'm a live singer. And we went to Israel to start the tour. So I was singing Number of the Beast in Bethlehem. And that was so cool, man. So cool. We're singing Number of the Beast in Bethlehem. That was just something so cool about that. And that's one of my abiding memories. And we're on Top of the Pops too. Then we were in the chart so we made a video while we were there for Top of the Pops on the fort of Masada next to the Dead Sea. It was incredible. Absolutely. It was 100 and something heat and no shade. And they had a camera in a helicopter, was one of the cameras. And this helicopter, on one sweep, it came down so low, we all ducked, man. The whole band, we were like, what the? As it came down. Because these were pilots from the Israeli army that had actually been in combat. They didn't give a shit about some rock stars being down there at all. So, no, right down, like head high he came on this thing, the whopper. So that was an amazing place to start the tour, and we went round. We went round. The various tourist attractions and everything. It was amazing, really, to start there. And it was just, it's horrible what's happening there now, but we were just lucky, I think, at that time that bands were playing in Israel at that time, international artists. We were just lucky that we got that window where there weren't too many problems and too much going on in that politically that we could do that. It was a great place to start the tour, and it went from all these hot places, and we played Greece and Bulgaria and everywhere, and we gradually went into winter time, and then we just seemed to follow winter everywhere it was for the rest of the X Factor tour.
That album, when you went in the studio to put it down, were you expecting to be working on an album that came in, if you include the 3 tracks that didn't make it onto the album, but the Justice of the Peace, I think it was I Live My Way, and Judgment Day, which appeared on B-sides. But this was 80 odd minutes for an album, which was pretty unheard of. If you look at what they'd done before that, I mean, No Prayer was only 43 minutes. I think Fear of the Dark was 57, and that was considered long. So this was an absolute epic.
It was a turning point, really, for Maiden. And I think for Steve as a writer, and he wanted to produce that album as well, to take control.
Your camera's just gone off, by the way.
Has it? Okay. To take control of the whole thing, then from the writing all the way through to mixing, the whole production. At one level, it's something now that I've done with my Circle of Stone album, and I've learned to become a producer, largely because of working with Steve as a producer and seeing why you would want to do that and go from the initial writing of the song and the idea to actually making sure that that idea is represented and mixed and put down and listened to in a way that you expect the listener to have it. You want it that way. And I think that's it. And if you think about it, we were up against grunge at the time. The other thing that we were up against was MP3 and all of that, and it was just before streaming, but people were swapping files for free, and it was a start. The iPod was just on its way, and EMI, when I joined Iron Maiden, EMI sold every manufacturing plant they owned in the world.
I remember that.
So what does that say? Okay, well, your CD format and streaming, you can have it as long as you want. You're not restricted by 44 minutes of vinyl to get your grooves wide enough to have a good sound. And I think, though we haven't talked about this, I think Steve at that time thought, you know what? If I can have it as long as I want, I'll have it as long as I feel it should be. And that was it. And we never wrote B-sides either. Every song had to be good enough that would be included on the album. So if it did become a B-side, it was because it didn't quite fit. And
do you think you would have had a different outcome to the sound and the production and the overall feel of that album had Martin Birch still been there?
Well, I was really hoping to work with Martin Birch because he'd done so many classic albums. Not just Maiden, but lots of things in the past that Martin Birch had done. And I was hoping that my first album with Maiden would be one with Martin Birch. So that was a small disappointment that I didn't get to work with Martin Birch on that, because I thought, oh man, what he must know, and just the things that he'd done previously and the incredible singers he'd worked with. I thought that would be great, but it just wasn't to be. So I made the most of what I got, and Steve was a really good producer. We got a great job there. The other thing was that he found a part of my voice that I never used before in recording, not properly. And that part of my voice, this lower register, like a third extra extra that I never even realized was there or thought about using. That's a main part of my voice and my delivery and what I am as an artist now. So on all of my new albums, all the Blaze Bayley albums since Iron Maiden, there's an extra part of my voice, and that's gradually grown stronger and developed, and that all goes back to those sessions on the X Factor.
What did you feel the day before the album comes out? You're all sat there, you're waiting for release day, and the reviews come in. So you look at the reviews; they weren't the greatest. But how did it affect you? Did you just think doesn't matter?
I don't think
get out there and show them?
I had so many bad reviews in the past and so many nasty reviews that I'd already taken a decision at that time to only believe nice things, because people have such an axe to grind. And a lot of these journalists, they've never been in the game, they've never been in a band, and they'll say something nasty or off-handed because they think they can get away with it. And also, they'll also lick the bottom of somebody because they think they're going to get a nice trip, all expenses paid. And so I never took them seriously. I thought, well, I know your game now, because of Wolfsbane and the good and bad reviews we had and the unfair reviews and reviews where you obviously haven't even listened to the record because you've misspelt the title and the song order is wrong. So, I just didn't. The main thing for me was performing live and the reaction of the fans. And it was a different sounding album. So you couldn't expect people to go, oh yeah, this is great. Because you really had to listen to X Factor. The sound of it was unusual, different voice, and the way that Steve had decided to produce the album, the sound of it, and using the guitars in a different way. You had to listen to get that. And people who did listen and they were open to it loved it. A lot of people, that's their favourite album.
And it is very interesting, isn't it? Because as time goes on, have you found that people who either didn't listen to it or those who dismissed that album or the one that followed up, Virtual 11, have actually gone back and revisited and come away with an improved opinion and a sort of, oh, actually, I like this.
Well, I think that's one of the tiny advantages that I got out of lockdown is people had so much more time to listen to music, and they've listened to everything. It's like, well, what's the Iron Maiden I haven't listened to death? Okay, I'll give the X Factor another chance. So people did listen to it again, and also it's so long ago. There's a whole new generation of people, of fans that go without any prejudice at all, go, oh, what's that old singer like then? And they listen from a completely different perspective. And also there's a small amount of people that I meet regularly that go, you're my first Iron Maiden singer. X Factor's my first album. You'll always have a cherished place in their heart because of that.
And we do forget, or some people do forget, that there was a changing musical landscape. I mean, I know you mentioned grunge at the time, but if you look back at some of the huge acts from the 80s, I mean, Whitesnake had virtually turned it in. Def Leppard were playing theatres, 1,500-seat theatres. They'd had that brief flirtation with grunge when they did Slang back in, and that didn't work. So those people were all struggling. They might have been struggling, or I might have been struggling, but they were struggling at a different level because you were still charting in every country. And the albums were still actually selling. So it wasn't the unmitigated disaster that people like to.
Well, it's because it's all because of fans. all because of fans and standing your ground. And as much as grunge came out, it was never going to affect Iron Maiden. That would not, it doesn't matter what the musical landscape is, you're Iron Maiden, and that's it. And
Did you enjoy?
that's the same
Yeah,
for
go on.
me. That's the same for me now. It doesn't matter what's going on. If I keep doing what I'm doing long enough, eventually it will be in fashion. So that's it. However long it takes. I'm not changing what I do. I am metal. That's it. I'm not changing at all. I don't care what's happening out there. This is me. As an artist, I'm not changing. And that's how it was in Maiden. No, I'm not changing. We're Iron Maiden. This is what we do. We'll do what we feel is the right thing for us. It doesn't matter what's happening out there. It absolutely doesn't matter. So grunge, really, again, another reason that I have less time for journalists working in bigger publications is because they were saying, "Oh, metal's dead, Maiden's over," and all of it. Fans weren't saying that. It was the journalists that were saying that, and then Maiden kept going and kept going. And then they're the ones with egg on their face because it's like, oh, metal isn't dead. Well, as fans, me being a metal fan and living in the world's for me, most important heavy metal band, yeah, metal's not dying. It may ebb and flow in popularity, but it will never die as long as it speaks its own truth for its own reason. And that's what happened. And there you are. There is the demise of grunge. And there is still, here I am, still doing it, making records, still my new album more popular than my last album. It's still a metal record with no reference at all to anything grungy or punky. I'm doing what I've always done. And that is how we've coped. And those of us that love metal and bleed metal and eat metal, fans and artists, the ones that have never changed, are still here.
I just want to big up a bit Virtual 11 because people tend to sort of focus on X Factor. But Virtual 11 was a really underrated album, I thought. And again, people may not remember that 4 of the songs that were written in those sessions ended up on Brave New World. And it's interesting, isn't it, how those tracks have made it into Bruce's live set at various points. There were some great tracks on there. Future Real, Angel, Angel and the Gambler, Educated Fool was a great song. How did you find it as well, being involved with songs on these albums that were running to virtually 10 minutes long?
Well, I think the important thing was in the beginning, nothing was written. And Steve Harris said, nothing's written. So it doesn't matter who comes up with the songs. They just have to be great songs. And I think one of my best days at work was Steve said, what have you got for this?
Cam's gone again. Oh, yeah, you're right.
And he said, and he started playing this thing and it became Future Real. I had these lyrics I'd had hanging around for a little while, inspired by a kind of paranoid character that would not admit defeat, but knew he couldn't win. And that was Future Real. So from those sets, that was just a great day. And Klansman also, it couldn't be shorter. It couldn't be, not without harming the vibe and the feel of it. And I remember Steve saying, what do you think of this? And he was on his acoustic bass doing it. It was great. Really, really great days. And that means something in my work now, that I'm not looking at, should this be long? Should this be short? I'm not looking like that. How does it feel? Does this feel right? Am I saying what I need to say? How much time do I need to take to say, right, feel this vibe now, my listener. Come with me on this vibe. And that's what I learned really from those sessions, that it's not about long or short. It's about how it feels. I personally have a different approach to what Steve has, but that's personality. That's my personality is there imprinted on the arrangement of my songs, and his personality, Steve's, is there, and Bruce's personality, as you can tell from his new album, then from Mandrake Project, then you can tell, that's more him. And you could compare just the formats and the arrangements and go, that tells a lot about who they are as a person and what the personality is like.
Tell me your favourite live date with the Maiden Boys. Was it still the Phoenix in July of '98
that is,
when it was steaming hot?
That is one of the most memorable, and not for the reasons you might think, but it was one of the smallest shows that we ever did. We just ended up, that show was put in as a filler to get us to a next place. It would have been a night off otherwise. And Ronnie James Dio was supporting my own, that was God to me. God was supporting me. God of heavy metal vocals was supporting. And I'm like, oh no, how do I cope with this? But it was a very small show. And so we couldn't fit the stage set in. There was no barrier. There were no backdrops. There was just Eddie hanging over Nico at the back. And you could actually walk around and shake hands with the fans because it was like a kind of in the round vibe. And I just dove into the audience, singing The Trooper and Man on the Edge. I just dove in. And that was why it was an incredible, incredible day. And it just because I then imagined this must have been what it was like at the beginning. This must have been the energy at the beginning. And that's what I always tried to have when I was fronting Maiden. What was it like at the beginning? What was the energy like in the beginning? That's what I want to try and bring to it.
One thing that adds to people's affection for you, I think, is the fact that there's never been any bitterness, no bitter feelings as to the way it's ended up. You've always maintained a very wise counsel. You never criticized anybody, and consequently, you've remained on friendly terms with all of them. And it's not usual. So, was it easy to do? I mean,
well, I was treated very well. I was treated very well. It was done with the greatest integrity. And really, it was an economic decision, and it was something that EMI wanted. The record company wanted. Everybody was having a reunion. Judas Priest original lineup, Black Sabbath original lineup. It was Deep Purple biggest lineup. Everybody was having a reunion, and EMI wanted that for Maiden because they were struggling with, there were no CD sales, there was no vinyl, bits of plastic were going down the toilet. That was it. They needed something to get people interested in the band again, and reinvigorate their thing. And it wasn't a musical decision at all. I had ideas. I was on Fireman for a third album, and it was no. EMI really want this, and that was what happened. I was treated very fairly. For me, the most important thing, Iron Maiden must continue. I realised that when I was in the band that what Iron Maiden offer to the world of music is unique, and for me, it's very important that Iron Maiden exist. So for me, as long as the band continued, even if it's without me, as long as it continues, that's a good thing. And I was treated very well, and I had opportunities, to make my own records. Everything I did failed after that. I didn't have great management, and I think I didn't have things. I'm terrible with business. I hate business. And so everything I did failed. So it was a long time in the wilderness after that, but that's nothing to do with them. That's not their fault. That's completely my own fault. I had control of my own destiny after Maiden. And it's now that all those little bits and all the influences and the lessons I learned in the studio way back from Wolfsbane, going right through to working with Maiden and making those two albums that became so important and so different and marked a turning point. It's that puts me where I am now. It's that that's made this possible. It's that that's given me a voice that I can actually use and interpret and work with to make important things happen on my own recording. So no, there's no bitterness. And before Iron Maiden, I knew Bruce Dickinson, and during Iron Maiden, I knew Bruce Dickinson, and after Iron Maiden, it's always been so supportive of me. And I have my own radio show now, and I play his stuff on my radio show, just the way he played my stuff.